Hello and welcome to Philm Phuckery, the unhinged podcast where I romanticize the villain, ship anything with queer tension, and obsess over films that are either genius or deeply cursed, sometimes both. I'm your host, Spencer Jones, and this season we're diving headfirst into the chaotic comfort that is the MCU. As usual, we'll be discussing the villains, the gay undertones, the logic parts of the movies, the technicalities, and of course the most chaotic moment. So let's just jump into it. This week we are talking about Iron Man 3. I really liked this movie. I used to avoid it a lot as a kid just because towards the end when everything changes and he makes the promise to Pepper and everything, which I'll talk about later on in this episode, but I used to avoid it a lot just because it gave me a lot of anxiety about Iron Man being a different type of Iron Man, you know? But it's such a funny movie, and I know I say it all the time, but the Iron Man movies are just so funny. They jam-pack them full of humor, and I just really love it. This movie specifically, and I'm going to talk about it a lot within the logic portion of this episode, but the dynamic between Tony and Harley is just so perfect. It's just such a good movie, and it really just shows where Tony's at in this point in time after the fight with the Chitauri in New York and kind of where he's going after this. I think it's just such a well done movie. Anyway, let's just go for it. So the first villain that we see as an actual villain is the Mandarin. And I remember when I was younger, the Mandarin really freaked me out at first until we realized that he's just like a goofy actor. He's just the face of the Mandarin. So then we find out that Killian is actually behind the Mandarin and that, Trevor is just the actor. And he was actually really good if you think about it, because his personality is like a silly guy. He's drunk all the time. He doesn't really know what's going on, but he is a really good actor because he plays the Mandarin really well. You would not know that he didn't know what was going on or what he was doing or whatever. So anyway, Killian is behind it. And I think it was a really interesting concept that people are exploding on accident and Killian is blaming it on a terrorist attack. And I think it was really smart and clever of him. And it shows just how willing people are to believe that it's terrorism. And the face that they've chosen, Trevor is an actor, but they chose a guy who looks like he would be somewhere in the Middle East. And people are so willing to believe that. No one thought anything of it. And it was very clever of Killian to use that to his advantage when he doesn't want people looking at what he's doing. So he's like, well, obviously it's a terrorist attack and here's the terrorist. It's very smart because people do want a face to the evil. And obviously that can't be Killian, so he just found a guy. I do think it's interesting though, and I feel like I see this a few times throughout the MCU, that Tony Stark kind of makes his own villains. And there are a few examples of this. I just recently watched Spider-Man Far From Home, and in that movie as well, it's kind of that Tony is such an asshole to everybody that he makes his own villains. So in this movie, in Iron Man 3, he is drunk and at this party and Killian is trying to talk to him and Tony was like, oh, I'll meet you up at the roof. He obviously never meets him up there. He was just being a dick and he was like, oh, well, you're too nerdy and ugly or whatever for me to talk to you. Like, I don't care what you're saying. He kind of created a bad guy in that moment. And then he had to then fight the bad guy that he created. If he was just a kinder person, that maybe he would have a lot less enemies and a lot less people to fight. I thought that was really interesting, and I do see it several times throughout the MCU. We'll talk about it later when the other ones do happen, but it's just such an interesting concept, I think, that Tony is regarded as this great superhero, and he's so amazing, and everyone loves him so much, but also he's making his own villains, Just be nicer. And I still love him, of course. So anyway, Killian is the actual bad guy of this movie. Pepper is so smart to catch him. When he's in her office and he's like, this is my brain, isn't it beautiful? It kind of looks like the universe. Let's look into my brain. Let me show you from behind what my brain looks like. He's talking about how this is such a great thing and it helps people rebuild their bodies or whatever. But he explains a little too far and Pepper catches that it could be used to weaponize people. She's so smart to turn him down. And I know that later on that kind of fuels his fire even more and he's even more of a bad guy. But imagine if she had said yes and he had been given access to all of Stark Industries, everything. It would have been so much worse. And then he was like, I wish you would think about it. And she is so composed in that moment. You can tell she's kind of freaking out a little bit, but she's so stoic. I don't know. It's just amazing. She's so strong and powerful in that moment. And I admire it because I wouldn't be able to. If I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just that I knew he was the bad guy, but he just gives off such a gross vibe. I would have been so uncomfortable in that moment. And she just held it together so well. I hate the dynamic, though, of Killian and Pepper, just because at the beginning, Tony is not paying attention to Pepper at all. He's not giving her the time that she needs, for their relationship. And so she's kind of turning away and she's not really close to him at the moment. And then she's like, wow, Killian is so handsome now. And he's walking without a cane or whatever. And he kisses her on the cheek and she's like, wow, he's so handsome. I hate that. And then later on, when Killian takes her hostage and she's going through the procedure that gives her the hot stuff, I wish I remembered what it was called, but she's going through it and she's strapped down and he's all embarrassed that he took her as a trophy for himself. It's so icky. It actually makes my stomach hurt to think about him being all like, it's embarrassing. Like, he's all cheeky about it. Disgusting. Like, stop. First of all, own up to it. If you're gonna be a weird creep, just be a weird creep. It's better than being like, yeah, you're like my trophy, but it's so embarrassing. Stop. I hate it. I have to stop talking about it because it's so fucking gross. Anyway, so like as a villain, I think Killian served a purpose. I think he was a good villain. I was very afraid of what was going to happen the whole time. I liked the idea of his project being to help people. And of course, it always turns into weapons. That's just how the world works, unfortunately. But it was a good idea at first. I know it was mostly Maya's idea. He just capitalized off of it. But he was a pretty good villain. He made me feel really icky and gross. And I don't know, he played it well. So good job. But also, just a side character, the vice president, what an asshole. The scene where the president's plane has been hijacked, one of the bad guys is flying in the Iron Patriot now, not War Machine anymore. So they've hijacked the plane, and Tony and Rhodey figure out that they have to go save the president, but Tony's also worried about saving Pepper. Rhodey calls the vice president of the United States to be like, hey, terrorists are attacking the president, so you should warn people. And the vice president is like, yes, absolutely, I will tell people. He just hands the phone over, doesn't tell anybody. We find out that it's because his daughter is missing a leg. So he's in cahoots with them because he's like, please help my daughter fix her leg and everything. As a parent, I understand doing whatever it takes for your kids. I'm not a parent, obviously, but I understand the concept. I've been told that like you would do anything for your kids. You'd probably kill for your kids if you're a good parent, and you probably die for your kids. But to also be the vice president of the United States and to be so willing to go against the whole of the US as well as probably the world. If they're using it for weapons, let's be so fucking for real. It's for the world, okay? They're gonna take it out on everybody. So even if his daughter is a part of that program, she's not safe. People are accidentally blowing up all the fucking time. Why would you risk your daughter, who, apart from not having a leg, is probably perfectly healthy? I just don't understand that, against the US and probably the rest of the world, to work with terrorists. That was just wild to me. I guess I will never understand because I'm not a parent, but I just can't handle it. But also a side note, hey, Jenna Ortega. I always forget that she's in this. It's that scene and I'm like, she looks kind of familiar. But hey, Jenna, we love you, girl. Anyway, that's all I had for the villains. It wasn't a whole lot. The villains in this movie didn't really catch my attention in the way that other villains do. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was really cool that they burn up and they can use that power. If they can control it well, they're able to use it to burn stuff and melt things, whatever. It was cool. But they were fine villains. So anyway, I'm going to move on to the gay undertones. So I'm going to talk about Tony and Pepper first, just because the consistency of it. And Tony and Pepper in this movie, I think Pepper specifically, it might just be that I'm gay, but my God. Okay, first of all, I want to admire Gwyneth Paltrow in this movie. So fine. I just actually can't get over it. Like every scene she's in, I'm like, wow, stunning. And the end of the movie when she's in the sports bra and the leggings and she's all hot and everything. Well, hot temperature, but also, physically. Her abs, I just want to take a moment to respectfully appreciate her abs because I know Gwyneth Paltrow worked hard for those. Abs are difficult. I've been trying for years. Not well. I'm not trying hard, but still it's difficult. I'm jealous. Anyway, so Tony and Pepper, sorry. As usual, Tony is trying his hardest and it's sad because he falls short every time. It's around Christmas time in this movie, and Tony, I know he was thinking for such a long time about what to get Pepper for Christmas. He comes to the conclusion that a bunny as big as the home that they live in would be a fantastic gift. He's so worried about her being like, well, do you like the gift though? Do you think it was too much? Is the gift good? Because I know he's freaking out. He's like, now that I see it in this home, it probably wasn't a good idea. I think he really does care. He just shows it all the wrong ways. And I think it was so sweet the way that he really was worried about Pepper liking that bunny or not. Obviously, she didn't. That's a crazy gift. What is she going to do with that giant bunny? But from my perspective, it's the thought that counts. However, if that is all she's getting in the relationship, plus him being so distracted and not paying attention to her in the way that she needs, I understand why she was like, Tony, shut the fuck up. I was just thinking about it too, the way that Tony has this great present and they have a date night thing, but he's also not ready for their date night. He's all insecure that Pepper was talking to Killian and thinking they were getting closer or whatever. He doesn't do their date night. And it's so contradictory of what he's trying to accomplish. If you're trying to get your partner to not go to someone else, what you want to do is spend time with them. And instead, what he's doing is pushing her away because she is not getting enough time with him. So she's looking other directions and he's pissed about that. And that's such a man thing, I think. It's just so interesting the way that he's like, but you do like the bunny, right? The bunny's good. I gave you a good Christmas present, but also I'm not here for date night. I already ate and I'm not even talking to you right now. I'm in my basement doing pull-ups. If he was like working on something important, I feel like it would have been more able to let it slide on Pepper's side. But he's literally just doing pull-ups in the basement. He's not even working on anything. He could have been up there for her. It's just such a dick move. But that's Tony, you know, he's always having dick moves. Anyway, I do feel like, though, in that scene where Tony is like, fine, I admit that I have not been okay since New York and I've been having a lot of anxiety and I've been not being able to sleep and everything. Yes, he's not giving Pepper what she needs, but at the same time, he needed comfort from Pepper. And in the moment when he does finally go to sleep, he's sleeping with Pepper. He has a nightmare and Pepper is trying to wake him up and be like, Tony, it's okay. He's in such a panic that he calls the Mark 42, which freaks Pepper out. And then he shuts it down and everything, and everyone's fine. Pepper didn't even really get hurt. She was just scared. I feel like in that moment, Tony needed comfort. And in that moment, Pepper kind of needed comfort too. Tony was saying sorry. He was like, sorry, it must have called in my sleep. I didn't mean for that to happen. I'll fix it, whatever. And Pepper's like, I'm going to sleep on the couch. You better go tinker with that. I understand where she's coming from and I understand the hurt that she's having. But in that moment, he just needed comfort. He was just having a nightmare. And then you're like, fuck you, I'm leaving. Go tinker on that. It's such a sad thing to me that Tony's opening that side of himself up to her and she's not willing to help him at all. The way that Tony does show his love, and I feel like people don't see it enough to appreciate him in his life. It can be difficult to show love in the way that people need it, but you still show it. And when they don't see it, it's actually so frustrating. I've been in situations where people are like, you obviously don't care about me because you're not showing me love in the way that I need it. I am showing you love in a different way. It's just not the way that you are needing it. It's like a love language thing, kind of, where Pepper is probably needing time together and probably needing communication, whatever. And Tony is so focused on protecting her that he's not focusing on her. You know what I mean? It's so sad to see because he says that he has to protect the one thing he can't live without, which is Pepper. And that's all he's been doing. He's been tinkering and he hasn't been sleeping and he's been trying to do everything he can to protect Pepper. And it shows when his house blows up, which was kind of silly of him to be like, I'm going to go on television and tell the entire world where I live and invite a terrorist attack onto my home where Pepper lives. They moved in together and he's like, I have to protect her against everything. And then he invites a terrorist to their home and Pepper's like, we should leave. And he's like, no, we shouldn't. Anyway, when his house does fall under attack, he only protects Pepper. He risks his life and Maya's life just to make sure that Pepper is safe in a suit. And if you notice, the suit covers the vital organs first. It covers her head and it covers her chest and then everything else just to make sure she's safe. And I think it doesn't get enough credit. I think Tony's not doing great in the relationship department, but he does care so deeply and he had that failsafe ready and he had been prepared to protect Pepper in any way necessary. So that was really sweet. And then the scene after Pepper has the suit and something's about to fall on Tony and she blocks it from him. Oh my God, you guys. That is like the most attractive thing I've ever seen. The way that we would be married next day if somebody did that to me. That's it. But I just like, ooh. Anyway. But he does really, truly still care about Pepper. When they're trying to save the president or Pepper, he's like, well, I can do both because I will save Pepper on my own and the suit will go save the president. But what happens is the president gets captured. He gets tied up in this boat where Pepper is also at. And this entire time, he's got probably hundreds of Iron Man suits trying to help him fight the bad guys so he can get to Pepper. Not one of these suits is untying the president. Rhodey's got to do it all on his own. And it's such a point of Tony doesn't really care. He's saving the president by fighting the bad guys, but he doesn't really care about saving the president. He's just doing it because that's what's done. if he actually cared about saving the president, he would have sent at least one Iron Man suit to go get the president down and not made it all Rhodey's problem without a suit or anything. So he finally gets to Pepper and he's like, trust me, I will catch you. You have to let go. You have to trust me. And she falls. Poor Tony, because God, that's the only thing that matters to him. And he really thought he lost her. And that's so sad. And then he just goes like crazy. He's like, I'm going to find Killian. I'm going to kill him, whatever. But then Pepper's alive because she went through the procedure so she can withstand the heat and everything. And she just walks out. And it's so badass the way that she comes out and one of the Iron Man suits sees her as a target. And she just takes it down, takes the hand, and then blows up Killian. Saves Tony again. Tony is such a lucky man. That's all I can say. And I wish that he treated her better, but he really is trying. He's just such a guy. Anyway, besides Tony and Pepper, my gay ship that I have for this movie is Pepper and Maya. And I might just be hella delusional. It might just be that I'm like, they're so attractive, but they are in love. It's very fleeting. Maya dies. And they only have a few scenes together, but every scene, the chemistry between them is so strong. And like I said, it might just be that I'm like, wow, Gwyneth Paltrow is so fine. And the girl who plays Maya, I have loved her from a bunch of different movies before this as well. I just love the actress. She's so good. It might just be that I'm like, I love when two pretty women get together. But here are reasons why I am delusional in thinking that they are in love. So this is just a funny part of the movie, and I liked this scene, and it kind of shows, but not really. But when Maya first comes to the house, and Pepper's like, who the fuck is this? And she's like, well, it was just a one-night stand, whatever. And they're talking about who she is and what she's doing, and Pepper's like, we have to go, Tony. And he's like, no, we're staying. And Maya's like, no, it's a great idea. We should go. She takes Pepper's side. And then she's like, and what the fuck with this giant bunny? And Tony's like, it's regular. It's normal. Chill out about the bunny, okay? That scene, just the dynamic between all three of them is so fucking funny. And it's so, I don't know, the tension is there. I might just be delusional. I'm so serious. But in that scene, I'm like, wow, Maya and Pepper, they're taking each other's side. They're both like, oh my God, this guy's crazy, right? Let's get together. Let's run away and get married. Anyway. So then Pepper saves Maya with the Iron Man suit before Tony takes it back. They drive away together. They go to this hotel room, I'm assuming. The scene where they're sitting on the bed and they're drinking their little alcohol drinks and they're talking about things. The way that Pepper looks at Maya, there's no straight explanation for that. I love my friends. I adore my friends. I don't think I look at them like that. Okay. And then Maya's feeling all of this sadness and Pepper's like, no, it's okay. We've been there. I relate to you. And they're gazing into each other's eyes so lovingly. And then the door knocks and they like sit there for a second longer. That doesn't happen. The way that they're lost in each other's eyes right now when the door knocks and they sit there for another second staring at each other. They don't want that moment to end. Gay. I saw gay, so I said gay. Because if a door knocks and I'm looking at my friend while we're talking, I'm going to go answer the door. I'm not going to linger my eye contact for a second more. That's gay. And then it ends up to all be a setup. And Maya does feel really bad because I think what happened was she fell for Pepper. She was like, well, I don't really care. Tony and Pepper, whatever. And then Killian comes through the door and he kidnaps Pepper. And Maya genuinely looks so sad and so apologetic for setting her up. She cares about Pepper now. And then later on, when Pepper is going through the procedure and Tony's chained up in the bed frame and everything, and he's showing Tony on the little balls with the magnets, you know, the hologram. Maya is looking at Pepper and she looks so sad to put Pepper through that. And she does not give a shit about Tony at all, which I love. But she just seems so genuinely sad for Pepper. And I think that is because they are in love. And if I'm wrong, don't tell me. Because I just want to live with this thought for the rest of my life. Because they would be so good together. And then Maya dies. And it's actually really sad. But, you know, what can you do, I guess? This is the last point I have for the gay undertones. And it's not gay, but it just is a confirmation of my bromance that I suspected between Tony and Bruce in Avengers. The end credit scene where Tony's laying on the couch and Bruce, he did fall asleep, but they were talking about Tony's whole thing and he was like trying to seek help through Bruce, even though he's not that kind of doctor. He says he's not a therapist, but I like to think that Tony called Bruce and he was like, can we talk about something? And Tony is not a very open guy. He doesn't seem like the type of person to talk about things, but he calls Bruce, his friend, over to talk. And I think part of it was being like, well, Bruce is a doctor, he'll be able to help me. And part of it was like, let's be friends and let's talk about things. He was willing to sit there and listen to his friends talk. And I think that's really sweet. And I do think that they are really besties. And I love it. And I really appreciate that Tony was able to get all of it out, even if Bruce wasn't listening. It's nice to be able to vocalize your thoughts. And I'm happy that Tony was able to do that. Okay, moving on to the logic and consistencies of this movie. The first one I have is that Jensen's in this movie. And I thought that was a cool callback, but also really sad because Jensen is dead. But it was just so interesting to see the way that Tony interacts with him when he is living high and large, you know, and he's billionaire, playboy philanthropist, and he like doesn't give a shit about what Jensen is saying. And then later on when he needs Jensen in the cave, then they're buddies and he's like, Jensen, I will save your life. I got you. Come with me. It's just interesting to see the way that people's perspectives change on people in different situations, you know, because he was such a dick to Jensen and it's actually really sad. And then later on, after that scene where we see Jensen, it might just be that I didn't live through Y2K, but I forget that that's a thing. It's so funny the way that Happy is following him around to protect him from Y2K. I didn't get that until this watch. They say it, but it just didn't even really occur to me because I think I didn't know what Y2K was at that time. Like I've learned about it from other movies and stuff, but it's so funny the way that he's following him around and Tony's like, I met this girl, but they've got to wait until midnight so Happy can go to make sure that Tony's safe. And then Happy breaks off Maya's plant. First of all, such a dick move. That's such a male fragile ego thing to do when she's like, oh, please don't touch my plant. Like they don't like that. And he's like, what the fuck did you just do? You told me what to do. I'm going to break your fucking plant. And then it explodes. It's almost like that's what she was trying to tell you not to do, Happy, you little shit. I'm glad that he wasn't like that later on in the MCU. I feel like he learned from his ways. It was just like a young guy thing to do, but I hate when men are like that. Anyway, so then the plant explodes, right? And he's like, Tony, get down. I got you. You're safe. Maya's like, oh, it's fine. That's just the plant. And he's like, oh, thank God it's not Y2K. Happy was so on edge. I know it for Y2K. And he's like, I got you, Tony. I got you. Stay down. And he's like, it's fine. Okay, go home. It's midnight. We're fine. I thought that was funny. Anyway, one thing I found interesting was the way that Tony's character is changing in this movie. He's not sleeping. He's having panic attacks. He's freaking out because of the Chitauri. He never really got okay after that. That followed him for the rest of his life, unfortunately. But I think it's interesting to see the first time he does have a panic attack and he's like, oh God, someone poisoned me. Something's wrong with my brain. Check my vitals. And Jarvis is like, you're just having a panic attack. It's fine. I think it's so interesting to think about because Tony didn't know what that was. Before the Chitauri, he saw himself as this larger-than-life guy. He's a narcissist. He thinks so highly of himself. He's probably never had anxiety in his life. And suddenly, after he goes through the wormhole and he sees space, something definitely larger than him, definitely able to take him down, he's scared and he's not ready for it and he has to prepare for it because he's never seen himself as smaller before because he's always been smart and he's strong with his Iron Man suit and he is clever and he's funny and he's full of himself. He's never had to be anxious in his life. He sees this hole of space that he knows he can't fight on his own. So he's trying to fix it and he's trying to prepare for it to protect Pepper, which is very sweet. I just found it interesting that Tony has never had a panic attack before. He's never had an anxiety attack. And I think it's very with his character that he would never have an anxiety attack and that he's like, what the fuck is happening? This is so scary. It's a heart attack, obviously. And Jarvis is like, well, no. I like that he is suffering through anxiety in this movie. So speaking of suffering through anxiety, well, first of all, he wanted to go to Tennessee to look into the bomb that was similar to the terrorist attacks to like figure it out, you know? And he's like, Jarvis, let's book a flight to Tennessee. And Jarvis is like, I'm on it. I got you. After his house blows up and Tony just gets out of the water and he is probably reeling from everything that's happening and he goes unconscious, he wakes up. And Jarvis has taken an unconscious Tony to Tennessee with a prototype suit that is not really ready for flight or combat or anything, is what they said. It's like he leaves Pepper, he leaves the house exploded, and Jarvis is like, well, you said you wanted to go to Tennessee. So we're here. And also now I'm out of battery. So good luck, you're in the snow. That was really silly to me. Anyway, so now they're in Tennessee. And he goes into this random shed and he meets Harley. I really love the relationship between Tony and Harley. It's like they're so meant for each other. They were meant to meet for sure. And I love the way that they have done their relationship in this movie. It's funny, it's sweet, it's helpful. They're buddies, they're partners. He's kind of a father figure to Harley because his dad walked out on him. I just really, and I know I've said it before, this movie's so fucking funny. And I love the way that Harley and Tony are always bantering. Harley is such a smart kid, and that's why Tony trusts him and he helps Tony. And thank God Tony found that shed. How could he have known that this kid was going to be that smart? And Harley's so willing to help him, and Tony's such a dick to him, but I kind of love it. He's a funny dick. Harley's talking about how his dad left him and everything. And Tony's like, which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it. And then he just moves on. I think it's so funny because Tony's like, well, my dad left too, which is different. He's like, oh, my dad left me, poor rich kid. But still, like, he's got daddy issues. We know it. Anyway, he cares in his own little clever, mean way, you know? And he's talking about how he knows that someone's bullying him because he relates to Harley so much. And he's like, well, I have something for you, so don't even worry about it. You just point this at your bully and it'll stun them, whatever. I think it's just so sweet the way that he kind of takes Harley under his wing and he's not coddling him too much. He's kind of treating him like an adult. They're just kind of buddies, and I just really love it. But anyway, we were talking about anxiety and I got completely derailed, but I really also love the way that Tony's freaking out about all of this New York stuff and Harley is so fascinated by it. And he's like, well, what happened in New York? Tell me about it. Tell me about it. And Tony's like, I need you to stop fucking talking to me because I'm going to freak the fuck out. And Harley's like, am I freaking you out? Am I freaking you out? How about now? Is this freaking you out? And he's like, I swear to God, if you don't stop. I just think it's so funny the way that they play off of each other, you know? And Harley's just a kid. How would he know that Tony's freaking out that bad? As a kid, you're not like, wow, space was probably really fucking scary for you. You probably have PTSD. As a kid, you're like, wow, you were in space. Tell me about it. Because even as a kid, me watching these movies, I was like, well, it didn't really occur to me the gravity of what Tony had been through. He almost died in space. He wasn't able to get a hold of Pepper. Manhattan was almost bombed and he had to save them and he had to save the Chitauri and he was fighting all of these things. Like, that is a lot. And that is scary. And that would give anybody PTSD. Like, holy shit, I'd probably kill myself after that. It never occurred to me until this watch just how deeply emotional all of that must be. And so I feel really bad for Tony, obviously. But I think it's really funny from a kid perspective. He doesn't know that that's how it feels. He's just like, wow, space, that's cool. And then I also love at the end when Tony just kind of leaves him, but he still wants to take care of him and he upgrades his shed and everything. And he's like, here's all this new stuff because you're so smart. You're my guy in the chair. I just think it's really sweet the way that Tony has to move on with his life, but he's still kind of like, thanks, kid. I appreciate you in his own way. You know, he's not a communication guy, but he's like, here's all this stuff. Thank you for helping me. I also, and I've talked about this in another episode, I don't remember which one, unfortunately, but I like the way that Tony is always upgrading his suits for different things. In this movie, Tony has all of these different suits, but they're not compatible with each other. And so when Killian rips off a limb of the suit, Tony has to jump into another suit. And when Killian rips that one, he has to jump into another one. And I feel like from that experience, Tony remembered it, he fixed it, he worked on it until he came up with the nanotech. Because when something gets ripped off, the nanotech can move to something else. So like if his chest armor gets ripped off, the nanotech can move from his arm to his chest to protect the vital organs, you know? He's always learning from experiences and tweaking the suits and figuring out new ways to protect himself and the people he cares about. So Pepper and eventually Peter as well. And I just think it's really interesting. And I don't know if that's exactly how it works in the minds of the MCU, but that's how I see it, is like in this moment when Killian's ripping all of this stuff off and he's like, oh God, and now I have half a suit and I have to go find another one I can jump into. It would have been nice if they were compatible, if he could be like, give me your arm over there and then keep fighting the robots with one arm and then I can have an arm. But that's what the nanotech is eventually for, you know? Speaking of all of the suits, though, and the reason why I didn't used to watch this movie a lot is because the anxiety that I got when he blew up the suits was so immense the first time I watched this. I actually think I cried. At the time when I was a kid, I was very afraid of change. I remember being really upset when Tony took his arc reactor out of his chest because I was like, well, he's not Iron Man anymore without his arc reactor. That's a different guy. Or in Thor Ragnarok, when Thor loses his eye, I freaked the fuck out. I was like, well, now Thor doesn't have an eye. It's a different Thor. It's a different guy. It's change. I don't like it. Anyway, I've gotten over it kind of now, but I remember genuinely crying when he blew up the suits. I was like, well, there's no more Iron Man, because I didn't know that there was going to be an Iron Man later, obviously. The movies were still coming out. He was my favorite character at the time, and I was like, he can't be Iron Man without his suits. What's going to happen? And then he does take his arc reactor out of his chest. It's just so much happening that little me was freaking out a little bit. But anyway, so he blows up the suits and he promises to Pepper that he's not going to be working on the suits anymore. And it was a really nice gesture. Looking back though, it was such an empty promise to Pepper, which is kind of a dick move, but I guess, do what you know, and that's what Tony knows. But he was like, I won't work on my suits anymore. I will spend more time with you and I will focus on our relationship. And then he goes back to the wreckage of his home to pick up all of his stuff. He picks up the dummies. And then later on, he does make more Iron Man suits. So it was such an empty promise. And I do think that did affect their relationship later on, because I think they do talk about it in other movies as well. It was also so sad to see when his house was blowing up and all of the robots are on the floor and they're like trying to help each other out and get up. It's so sad that they made them autonomous like that. Like, don't make me feel bad for robots right now, especially when they're dumb. And he's always calling them dumb, but they've given them personalities and everything. And I thought that was really interesting. I like the way that human minds are able to personify things like that. But anyway, all of his house goes down into the water, right? And that giant bunny is burning and then it's in the water. It's just so much pollution to the water. Is no one thinking about this? Maybe it's just me. And maybe they fish it out later, because I know that he gets his robots out of the water, but I feel like the giant bunny is down there forever. Who fishes that out and where does it go afterwards? You know what I mean? Or like the wreckage of the home is just down there now. And then he goes back after he takes the arc reactor out and he throws that in the water too. Boys polluting the water. What are we doing? Why are you throwing it in the water? It's symbolic, I understand, but stop putting shit in the water. Don't do that. It's just gonna like sit there in the water now, this arc reactor. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to the technicalities now. The first thing that I have to say is the Iron Man movies are so good with songs. The songs in the Iron Man movies they're so catchy, they're so badass. Like, Tony has good taste in songs. I love every song that's in any of the Iron Man movies. They're all so good. Speaking of personifying things, I like that they gave the Mark 42 a little bit of personality too. Because when Tony was like, and what were you doing with Killian? And Mark 42 looks at Pepper and she's like, what? And then later on, he finally brings Mark 42 to Harley's shed. And he sets it on the couch and Mark 42 is looking at him and he's like, are you comfortable now, buddy? And he's just staring at him. It gives such personality to an empty suit. It's hollow, but I love it. I know I say it all the time, but there are so many little parts of this movie that are so funny. And I wish that I could talk about every part, but genuinely this episode would be like 3 hours long if I could. Just watch the movie, because every other thing that is said is so funny. It's just perfectly timed and it's such a funny movie. Anyway, so this movie does take place during Christmas and it's not super prominent, but it is what's happening. And I really like that when Tony is without his suits or anything and he's trying to find the Mandarin in Miami and he's collecting all of this stuff and he builds bombs out of Christmas ornaments. I just wish I would never use them, but I wish that I had ornament bombs. I just think that's so festive. It's so cute. I love it. Anyway, the fight scenes in this movie too. The first one that I think of is when Rhodey's in the Iron Patriot suit and they're trying to get him out and they are not able to open the suit or anything and they start melting the suit and Rhodey's like, don't open it, I can take it, but obviously it's getting too hot and the suit is protecting Rhodey, so they're like, we have to open the suit so you don't burn, and he's like, okay, and then he jumps out and he smacks the guy in the face. So cool. And then also the scene, I think it's either right before or right after this, but the fight scene where Tony's waiting for the Mark 42 to come to the place in Miami from Tennessee, and he's only got the arm and the boot. Well, before that even, when he's talking to the henchmen and he's like, just wait, 3, 2, 1, it's ready, just wait. And they're like laughing at him. And then finally he does get in, he blows him up. Anyway, the fight scene where he just has one hand and one foot and he's spinning around and he's fighting everybody and he's falling down and he's going back and everything. The choreography in that and the way that they've done it is so cool. It's so interesting to watch. And then the guy where he's like, I don't even like working here, man. They're so fucking weird. It's just so cool and it's so funny. And I love the way that they balance that. And I always say it, but it continues to be true. Speaking of the Iron Man suits though, I liked that it wasn't just one Iron Man suit over and over and over again when he calls all of the Iron Man suits. He's working on different types of suits and different colors and different styles and different everything. You know, he's not just fixing one thing in Mark 1, Mark 2, whatever. They're all different. And I wonder, and I probably could have looked this up, but I didn't. I wonder if they are homages to the different types of Iron Mans in the comics. They probably are, but I really thought it was interesting and cool and unique how they did that in the movie, and I really liked that. Anyway, moving on to the most chaotic moment of the movie. Because it's funny and it's dramatic and there's a lot happening, It's the scene where he's testing the Mark 42. He's just injected the whatever, I don't understand the technology, into his arms. He's like, okay, let's call the suit to me. And he's playing the Christmas music and he's dancing. I love the dance that he does. It goes on his arm fine. And he's like, okay, send them all. And they're shooting at him super fast. And he's like, let's slow it down, please. I'm freaked out. Please, I'm scared. He's got to catch all of these pieces in different ways. And then, it hits him in the crotch and he's like, oh God. And then it hits him in the back. The timing of all of it and the choreography of it is so well done and it's so funny. And then the drama of it's now the face piece and they're like squared off, him in this face piece, and it comes at him and it flies upside down and then Tony's got to spin upside down and catch it on his face and it's so badass and he superhero lands and then something hits him and it all falls apart. It's so chaotic in every way imaginable and it's so funny. It's so cool to watch and the CGI and everything, and it's just amazing. So anyway, that's all I have. I'm going to end on a quote as usual. And the quote that I've written down only because I'm really so obsessed with how mean to Harley Tony is. It's in such an endearing way, It's out of love. It's that scene after Harley has just helped Tony get the file and get out of the bad guy's grasp, that girl and that bald guy. Is he bald? He's either bald or he's blonde. I'm really sorry for not remembering. And I'm sorry for thinking that blonde people were bald. Anyway, it's after that and they're in the snow and Tony's hijacking a car and he's leaving Harley behind and Harley's like, I'm cold. And Tony's like, I can tell. You know how? Because we're connected. And then he drives away. Love that scene. Such a funny movie. Please go watch it. Anyway, that's all I have for today. So if you would like to follow me on TikTok or on Instagram, I am at PHILM PHUCKERY. And if you are listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, just know that this podcast exists on both as Philm Phuckery with a PH for both. If you are enjoying what you're listening to, please follow, download, subscribe, comment, whatever, depending on the platform you're listening on. Just any kind of engagement would help me. If you think that other people would enjoy listening to me ramble about random things for like almost an hour, share with them. If you know people who like Marvel, if you know people who just like to listen to shit while they're doing chores, anything helps. And if anybody has any ideas for my next commercial break, if you have any suggestions or any movies you'd like for me to talk about in weird ways and in great length, let me know. You can message me on the social medias. You can comment on this episode. That episode will probably be after Civil War, so it'll be in a couple months, but it's nice to get ideas if anybody has any. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week for Thor: The Dark World, and I can't wait to see you there. Okay, love you, bye.